Cyber spying, keylogger software, intercepting electronic email, and other data are just some of the ways that litigants in a divorce case can end up facing criminal trouble themselves. But of course, the electronic information is so incredibly valuable that it's no wonder people go to extreme lengths to gather this information. My guest here today is Grace Rubio. She is the owner and founder of Rubio Digital Forensics, and she has testified in both civil and criminal cases at the state and federal courts. She's here today to talk with us about what information can be obtained, how to go about obtaining it and protecting that information, and just to share her experience in helping advise people when it comes to all things electronic data. Thank you so much, Grace, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So obviously your breadth of experience, it goes beyond divorce work. You're called in to help with criminal work and to help in other civil litigation. But I do want to know, when is it that people are bringing you in a divorce case?
Well, I really want to emphasize that I request that I be brought in as soon as possible, as soon as there's even an inkling that you may need digital evidence to be preserved, analyzed, or used in any sort of proceeding. So in divorce cases, I've seen it be used in situations where you want to see what's on the child's device that may have been set up by one parent or the other. And, the child's device had something, I don't necessarily want to say nefarious, but unusual or potentially concerning for the other parent. And they want to see, how did that child gain access to that information? Or they want to preserve text messages so that way there's no question of the authenticity of those text messages for the court. We can then go ahead and extract those text messages directly from the device and present those to the court. If there's instances of one spouse has deleted text messages and a request for production has been made and that spouse has not produced them because they claim that they don't have them, and you need to validate that the messages that your client has or the other party has are in fact authentic, then you need to have a digital expert, forensic expert, come in and actually analyze those and extract from the original device.
Sometimes I know a lot of people think that they'll just delete the messages, they'll delete the data. And does the information actually get deleted? What happens? And does it depend upon the device? And how far back is information stored that you can recover and retrieve?
So I'm going to give you the phrase that most common phrase amongst digital forensics experts and probably amongst attorneys. It depends. Okay.
Right.
It depends. It depends on the type of device. It depends on the operating system of the device. It depends on which version of the operating system, when that operating system was last updated in correlation to when the messages were deleted. If the messages were double deleted, like on iPhones, on the newer versions of iOS, if you delete the message, it's still available for you to review under recently deleted items for up to 40 days. But if you go into recently deleted items and then permanently delete them, then it's probably going to be gone very, very quickly. You may be able to retrieve them from iCloud backups depending on how your settings are, but the amount of window for that, the window for that time frame is very small.
Interesting.
Very
is
small.
That changed as a result of sort of advancing technology? Because I don't know, for some reason I thought that it existed longer than that.
It used to be able that you could recover these messages until they were overwritten. But I want to say this was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I want to say probably the release of iOS 11, and don't quote me on that because I'd have to double check. When they changed the structure of the SMS database that stores all your text messages, that changed. And the ability to recover messages changed.
Interesting. Okay. So another thing I want to ask you about, this is I just have so many questions, so it's going to be fun. I notice especially among younger people, that they're not really texting so much anymore. A lot of their communication is done via direct messaging, whether that's through like the messaging app in Instagram or through messaging apps in video games or, Snapchat or whatever. Are you able to recover data that is done through the delete? I mean, is it a different?
It's different.
From text messaging versus
It's very different.
apps.
It's very different. Facebook Messenger, you can recover some stuff. Your best source of the evidence is to go directly to the account itself. But you need the credentials and authorization to get that. You'd have to request that the court authorize it or order it, or that there's some sort of Rule 11 agreement between the parties to permit that collection. I know I scared my forensic science class that I did a workshop for at Ursuline when I showed them, hey, we could recover deleted Snapchats from here. And they went bonkers because they thought that we could never recover anything, and yet we could recover some. This was an older version. I think it was an iPhone 10 that we were analyzing, but it got the point across to them that nothing's ever fully gone. Okay. So it really just depends on the device. I've recovered TikTok messages that were direct messages between parties and recovered deleted ones that had been in the TikTok app. Instagram, you just don't know until you try. I mean, most of it's, you really don't know until you try. The other thing you have to think about is how many people are taking screenshots of their messages and then deleting the message, but forgetting to delete the screenshot.
Right.
So they very well could have deleted the message, but there's a screenshot on the phone that they took at one point in time that incriminates them deleting the message.
Okay, that makes total sense. Yeah, I'm thinking of all the screenshots. Let's talk about, I see ads for keylogger software. I have used keylogger software on my child's phone. He knows this, it was a big discussion. It is certainly a very powerful tool. When is it okay to use and when is it not okay to use?
From my understanding, because of course I'm not an attorney, so this is layperson understanding. If it's a child under the age of 18, you can use it without their disclosure or without their knowledge. If a parent or any adult in that household uses that device, you have to notify each adult in that household of its use on that device. So take, for example, if you have a desktop computer that the whole family uses, you need to notify each adult in that family that this software is installed.
So everybody knows. Otherwise, the thing that's scary is that it's so readily available to purchase the software, and it's very powerful and it gives a lot of information, but you can easily stumble into criminal action. And of course, this is not for legal advice. We're not giving legal advice on the program here today. It's just information. But I think it's so important for people to know that just because you're being targeted in a market, in an ad, that, this is available doesn't mean you should use it.
Doesn't mean it's necessarily legal.
Right.
Or that the way most people would use it would be legal.
That's right.
And so they have to be very, very careful. They should always consult with their attorney.
So obviously you're being called in. Usually I would imagine if there's, a suspicion that information has been deleted and the information would be useful in a divorce case. So I'm thinking things like affairs or money mishandling.
Hidden assets are a big situation, or child custody issues, pornography usage, proving a common law marriage or disproving a claim of common law marriage. That has been quite common on my radar recently.
Common law marriage is such an interesting topic in Texas because I think it creates a lot of business for both of us, for sure. It's a lot of people aren't aware that when you're cohabitating with a partner and you're holding yourselves out, and it has a specific meaning, but it's not a required amount of time people think for common law marriage to exist, you have to have lived together for a certain amount of time, and it's really not. And so we get allegations of common law marriage quite often.
Oh, yes. I have at least one active case right now dealing with a common law marriage claim, and then actually a probate case in which one party passed and the boyfriend who is claiming to be a common law husband is claiming access to the estate. And now I've been brought in to help analyze the data.
What, in my experience, the judges are just not willy-nilly giving access to all electronic devices. They're pretty judicious about that. What do you find is most persuasive? When do you find the courts are willing to give you access to the information?
So you have to meet a standard called NRA Weekly Homes, or that case standard. And there's multiple cases that pertain to NRA Weekly. I'm just pretty familiar with that case because I've done CLEs with other attorneys discussing NRA Weekly.
And a CLE is a continuing legal education.
Yes.
That's when Grace is called in to educate lawyers on how to do this.
Yes. So typically you have to meet the different prongs in order to obtain access to the data for an NRA Weekly Homes claim, is my understanding. Sometimes if you can show that there's reason to believe that the party will go and delete data or intentionally spoliate evidence, meaning tamper with or destroy the evidence, the judges will say, okay, we want you to preserve everything, but you're not allowed to look at it until we've had a Weekly Homes hearing to determine if access has been, if the prongs have all been met in order to justify access. So we can preserve it and not analyze it. So at least we know that everything's in a safe state.
Right.
So that's the first step, is always preserving the data.
Right. Making sure that it's protected.
Correct.
And that you can access it.
Well, that we have a copy of it.
Right.
So that we have it in the state that it's in at the time that we preserve it.
And then what else does the court usually want to know?
So they'll want to know how we go about preserving it, if we're using industry accepted practices, best practices, if there's any standards that govern the methodology we use, what tools we're using, if we're trained in those tools, if we have experience with those tools, why we do what we do. And so once you can explain the process, then the judge is more likely to authorize it, in addition to giving background into your credentials and showing that you understand what you're doing, and you're not just somebody off the street who says, oh, I can do this, versus somebody who actually has the background, the qualifications, and the training to do this.
And does the information that you're seeking, does that have to be specifically compelling in the case, or can you, because we're not allowed to go, quote, on fishing expeditions.
Correct.
So, right? I can't just have a suggestion that there's something that might be helpful. I actually need to be able to convince the court that that's going to be persuasive.
Right. And that's one of the prongs from NRA Weekly, is that you filed a motion to compel, and that either they haven't responded to that motion to compel, or the response is lacking, and you have some sort of evidence that shows that this data should exist, and they have failed to produce it. So if they have failed to produce it, say, for example, you have an email message and you've already produced it to the other side, but they have not reciprocated the production by producing their own version of that email, why haven't you produced it? Well, if you deleted it, then we have a problem.
Right.
Because then, depending on when that message was deleted, that could be considered spoliation.
Which was evidence that was there that then you...
Right. If they deleted it when they were already anticipating litigation, then they could be in some serious trouble.
So if you know litigation is coming, going and wiping your devices is probably not the best move. Or maybe it is. I don't know. But anyway, again, not giving legal advice.
Let me put it this way. I have a case right now where the party was served with the temporary restraining order, and 2 days later, wipe the devices.
Because the one thing for sure you'll be able to tell, even if you're not able to recover the information, you will be able to tell that the information was deleted.
Correct.
And the date that it was deleted.
Correct.
And another area that's interesting these days is, of course, the realm of artificial intelligence and manufacturing data. I mean, people I know can go in and make fake text messages that look real.
Screenshots, you've been able to make those online for years.
Are you called in often to authenticate, to look at the data to see if that's the actual real picture that was taken?
So I don't do video or audio in-depth audio or video forensics. So anything that's related to artificial intelligence, deepfakes, there are other people who specialize in that area. That is not an area that I particularly specialize in.
Okay.
So I primarily focus on computers, cell phones, and online accounts, including your social media forensics and analysis to preserve it and then present it to the court. But there are other people who focus on audio, video, vehicle forensics, drone forensics, Internet of Things forensics. There are so many different types, all within the digital forensics realm. You can't be an expert at everything.
No. So you were explaining to me before we started that really you're sort of the post-mortem expert. Like after the death has occurred, you're going in and looking to see what happened and when it happened, right?
Right. I'm trying to figure out what caused this person to die. Mm-hmm. I am the medical examiner of the digital world. That's the best way of explaining it as far as another form of forensics.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the types of cases. So obviously I know you from family law cases, but you also work in other civil arenas as well.
Correct.
And so we were talking about intellectual property theft is a big area.
It is.
And so what other types of cases are you being called in to examine the digital information?
So I do a lot of cases related to employees leaving their employer's company and then maybe starting a competing business. And so the attorneys will call me in and say, we need to know they left suddenly. Multiple people left the company at the same time. We need to know, did they take anything? And so I'll analyze the company computer. And upon reviewing that, if I see evidence of data getting transferred to cloud storage or to external hard drives or being forwarded via email, I'll be like, okay, there's evidence of external storage devices. Do you have these, or does your client have these? And if they don't, then you need to assume that the data has been exfiltrated and is no longer in your possession or control and is now in control of your former employee, and we need to get it back.
And is it possible to get it back? I'm just thinking, like, once digital information kind of goes out there, right? It's really like putting toothpaste back in a tube.
It is, but that's why the courts are available. Mm-hmm. I've had multiple cases where at the end of the case, permanent injunctions were issued. And so if any of this data continues to spread, then the parties can go back to the permanent injunction for relief in that matter. But you do your best to recover as much as you can and try to figure out, okay, well, this external hard drive was connected to 3 or 4 other computers after it left the company's system. So where are those other computers? I need to go look at those and see if other external storage devices were connected to those, if the data was copied to there and then transferred to the external. It can be a very long and deep rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But those are the fun ones. Those are a lot of fun. Those are a lot of fun.
Just sort of bringing it back to family related matters. I'm sure in your world you see a lot of information. You see a lot, just period, of what's happening. Do you have thoughts or suggestions for what parents can do to help keep kids safe online?
As far as keeping kids safe, and this is for somebody who does not have children, okay, I would be watching them like a hawk on everything that they're doing. If there's a parental control, enable it. If you're allowing them on social media, have a social media account that you are monitoring their activity on that social media account. Or have the credentials to that social media account so you can also be monitoring their actual access.
Right.
And data.
I did tell my children when they got their phones, I said, you need to remember these are my phones. You have permission to use them, but they're my phones and nothing that happens on here is private. There's no expectation of privacy.
Well, and most children don't understand that.
Right. They don't.
At all.
Yeah.
At all.
Because it feels private. It feels like, you're just in this little world with the other people that you're connecting with and not having an awareness of how big that circle is.
And it could be huge. And you just have to be very careful with who they're talking to, what they're doing, really know who their friends are, and watch out for any changes in behavior or things like that. And even if it's just getting the device every once in a while and start exploring, seeing what they're doing.
And one of the things that I learned was really key was looking in the direct messaging, because they're not sending text messages, that's what I've learned as a parent.
I have no idea what they're doing with that. Because as I said, I don't have kids, so I'm just going off of an assumption here.
Yeah.
I really don't know what apps teenagers are using these days.
Yeah.
Unless I see a device and then I'm like, oh, this is a new one. Haven't seen this app before. Let me dig into this and see what I can pull.
And the challenge is, I always say, at least in my case, my children are much smarter than I am when it comes to digital information and digitally, using digital devices. And so it's hard to stay ahead of them. But of course, you have that upper hand if you were teaching classes at Ursuline on Snapchat. Let's talk just briefly about your background. How did you get interested in digital forensics?
It was actually on accident. So I had graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical and computer engineering from Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts. And after that was I finished the degree requirements in October of 2009. So we're in the middle of the Great Recession. Nobody's hiring. And I had planned on going into medical device research and development. Like, I had tailored my degree program to work in that field. But Obamacare was going through Congress. Obamacare had a proposed medical device tax, so nobody was hiring, especially in medical device technology. And so I moved back home to Dallas because I was born and raised here. I graduated from Ursuline. So that's why I'm still involved there. But I was like, okay, let me find tech support, just something to get out of the house. I needed to do something. I had done tech support all throughout my time at Ursuline and at WPI. And so I was like, let me just get tech support, just do something to get out of the house. And so I came across a post that said computer forensic investigator. I'm like, that sounds cool. I've got the background for that. You got to know how computer systems work. And hey, I know how computer systems work on the electrical level, how the zeros and ones are formed with transistors. I did that in the lab at university. And so I applied for the job. They had multiple applicants. I interviewed. I was their only interviewee. Got the job the same day, and I was with them until they decided to close the business, and I bought the assets and started my own company. So it just, you never know where you're going to end up. Let's put it that way.
You don't.
You never know where you're going to end up.
And this is an ever evolving field, I'm sure, that you have to stay on top of things.
Absolutely.
Because it changes daily almost.
It does. It does. There's a new app that comes out or a new update to the operating system, and you have to be able to reverse engineer the artifacts that you're seeing to determine how they were created in the first place. And so one of the things I tell my summer interns, I host summer interns from Ursuline as well. If you're interested in this, major in some form of engineering. Mm-hmm. You can do digital forensics background or a minor in digital forensics, but get some form of engineering, whether it's computer engineering or computer software engineering, electrical computer engineering, I don't care. But get something with engineering, because there's something about the engineering mindset that I find is so helpful in teaching and understanding what we're doing and being able to figure out what we're doing, because everything goes back to the scientific method.
And being able to grow and adapt to keep up with it when you've got the method
right, because
down, the basics.
The everything goes back to the scientific method. You have a hypothesis, you need to test that hypothesis and go back to, did your findings either prove or disprove your hypothesis? And then change your theory and keep testing until you find an answer.
What do you love most about the work that you do?
Oh my God. I love finding the truth. People lie. We all know this. People lie. Computers don't know how to lie. People can make them appear like they're able to lie by changing timestamps and things like that. But there will be a record of that somewhere that shows that an actual human went in to change the timestamp on something to make it appear as something else.
I just had this vision of like the truth. You actually have access to the truth in the work that you do.
Yes.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking time, Grace, to be here and to share with us a little insight into the world of digital forensics.
Absolutely.
And, helping people learn how to protect the information and obtain information legally. So your time has been very valuable. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you want to learn more about Grace Rubio and Rubio Digital Forensics, we'll include a link to her website so you can contact her there. Thank you so much.